Okay, where are all the mid-rangers at? $500 used to be a laughably expensive price tag for a mobile device. Now it's smack dab in the middle of the market. In North America, at the moment, we're really flush for phones around $300. The super premium end of the market is really well represented, but there's a bit of a power vacuum happening at $500 outside of used devices or year-old flagships. Getting on track, what we're talking about today, I've spent the last 2 months walking around with an Honor View 10, and it's a nearly perfect offering considering the price that this phone arrives at. It is kind of a tricky discussion though. What do we compare it against? It stomps all over phones that are cheaper, and it rightfully loses a lot of fights to more expensive offerings. Let's just jump in. First of all, props where props are due. I really like the build and design of this phone. It doesn't feel like you're being punished for spending a little bit less on a phone. In fact, quite the opposite. I like this feel over more expensive devices that are just all clad in glass. It's more durable, it's less slippery, it's definitely a lot less fingerprint smudgy, and I don't feel like I need to clad it in some kind of armor case like I do significantly more expensive options. Honor does include a decent clear plastic bumper, but I don't feel like the phone needs this just to leave the house. Getting to the front of the phone, this hardware did introduce a small ergonomic challenge for me. I'm not the biggest fan of home button mounted fingerprint sensors in general, but this move towards taller aspect ratios introduces even more hand dance in unlocking the device. I'm so used to rear-mounted fingerprint sensors on larger phones that I can't say I ever felt super comfortable making that transition happen in my hand, especially when I'm on the go. I'm trying to do other things. I'm trying to focus on other tasks. I want to reference the phone real quick. I had to stop and actually think about that action lest I flip this phone out of my hand accidentally. That said, the scanning hardware is phenomenal. This is an excellent light touch, really fast, really reactive way to unlock your phone. It just makes me nervous. Tall, skinny, narrow device right on that bottom edge, and you have to sort of alter your grip or alter your behavior to make sure you're doing that in a safe way. We're talking about a mid-ranger here, so obviously we should expect to see a few compromises opposite more expensive phones. The display is one area where I feel Honor probably saved a little cash. It's not the brightest, and I'm just so used to contrast-rich AMOLED screens that this is lacking a little. It's readable outdoors, but it definitely struggles under direct sunlight. And getting a little nitpicky, this is deep in the weeds and certainly not a deal breaker. I don't think this is going to affect a lot of people, but for me, and I'm being overly sensitive about this, kind of feel the refresh rate is a touch slow on this display. It's really tough to show on camera, and it is also more than just a little bit subjective, but I'm seeing just a little bit more ghosting. It's just a little blurrier in movement than I would otherwise prefer. What we absolutely can't fault here is the performance. The Kirin 970 is a monster chipset to deliver in a phone at this price point. It's something of a missing link between the Qualcomm 835 and the Qualcomm 845. Performance is roughly in that 835 territory, but it includes built-in hardware, that NPU, the neural processing unit for hardware-based on-device machine learning and AI services. That NPU hardware is already well represented in the camera app. We'll talk about that just a bit. Also, machine learning for things like Microsoft's translation app, really quick, really speedy translation services. So it is that nice carryover. Qualcomm 835 performance, which there aren't many apps and services really taxing that hardware yet, and with a little peace of mind. I think this will age gracefully as more apps and services look towards those hardware solutions for on-device AI. Benchmarks don't truly reflect real-world performance, but this phone easily competes against the snappiest phones in my collection, especially those Qualcomm 835 powered devices that are running almost stock builds of Android. We're going to see numbers that line right up against phones like my Xperia XZ1 Compact. So yeah, daily operation, this phone is a monster. We're already at that tier. Anything this powerful or more powerful is gross overkill, crazy overkill for just covering the basics. Like, oh, I just want my Twitter app to launch a fraction of a millisecond faster. Not necessarily the best reason to go out and spend a lot of money on a phone. We're really pushing into heavy multitasking situations, gaming, multimedia content consumption, and creation services, and I haven't found much that can really tax this hardware. I threw it out on Twitter and got some amazing replies on what games I should be looking to benchmark my phones in the future, and I threw everything that was suggested at the Honor View 10, and this phone handled them all like a champ. We've got plenty of horsepower here, so I feel pretty confident that this phone will age gracefully over the next year or two of services coming out, the next generation of apps and software and games. And here we should spend a little time talking about the software that's actually on the phone, and of course that means talking about EMUI. That's Honor and Huawei's custom skin for altering the appearance and the functionality and adding some features to stock Android. Most obvious, a lot of design changes, different structures for menus, different operations in your settings, but there's also a lot of stuff running under the hood. Starting with the positives, that's where EMUI really shines. Again, we've got a lot of machine learning algorithms at play for resource management and garbage collection. My experiences with Honor and Huawei phones, these things age really well over time and maintain a higher level of performance than many of their competitors. A lot of folks who watch my videos are not going to be fans of skins, but EMUI still makes a good faith argument for why manufacturers should get involved in the nuts and bolts, the guts of Android. Moving to this taller screen, we also get a few nice ergonomic considerations. Not only controlling on-screen controls at the bottom, if you want, you can completely disable that and just go to nothing but the fingerprint sensor, a series of swipes and gestures to control everything there. That made me nervous. I did not like operating the phone that way. But what did work well was a floating software navigation dock. And it's basically just a little dot that floats around on your screen. You can move it anywhere you want, and it replicates all of the functionality of your bottom-mounted navigation controls. I usually don't like manufacturer customizations to how I get around, how I navigate the interface on an Android phone. I'm pretty well programmed where everything should go on Android, but this one I adapted to a lot faster than I thought I would. It's really well implemented, and you spend a little time getting used to it. You probably could use it instead of these bottom-mounted controls. You can get rid of it entirely and just have an all-screen device. Add to that just some fun content capturing, screen capturing tools like Scroll Shot, automatically just giving you a long list of screen automatically captured into one image. I really like using that on recipe websites just because there's always way too much information and story. Like, I don't want your story, I just want the recipe. Again, I digress, but also a built-in screen capture video tool. Those of you who like to capture gameplay or you just want to show something to someone, like how you get around something on a screen or on a website. Again, just built directly into your notification shade, and that's a nice touch. It's really easy to find, it's really handy, and it's really accessible. The look and design of EMUI is always going to be controversial with Android enthusiasts. Happily, it's been well refined over time, and the user has control over how they want the phone to function. And while everything looks different than stock Android, at least all of the parts or pieces are generally where they should be. It doesn't take much relearning of the UI to get into what Honor has to offer. And as a last note about software, I'm really happy to see that my review unit had Android 8.1 pre-installed right out of the box. I didn't have to wait for an update, but again, with such a heavily skinned device, that does bring up some of the more obvious concerns. Will we be getting updates and patches as quickly as devices that are closer to just running regular stock Android or Pixel devices directly from Google? Unfortunately, only more time using the phone will really tell if we get that kind of support, that kind of immediacy for our handsets and our updates. Shifting back to some hardware, Honor devices have a great reputation for camera performance, and the View 10 does not disappoint. Even for the price point, and comparing it against more expensive phones, this is a great still photography experience. The weak link here might be video, where there's no image stabilization of any kind, hardware or software, so that's a bit of a bummer. I have a full deep dive on the camera performance for the Honor View 10 available for my Patreon subscribers. If you really want to see what this phone can do, definitely go check that out, patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. Where camera performance is usually top-notch on Honor devices, one of the more challenging areas for Honor is usually audio, specifically headphone audio. View 10 offers up a feature that is even lacking on its upscale cousin, the Mate 10 Pro, and that's a built-in 3.5mm headphone jack. So I've got to give kudos. I've got to give the big thumbs up props. This is so much more convenient than hunting around for dongles and adapters for those of us who like the cabled headphone experience and really want that consistency of audio delivery. The convenience factor is great. I love having this jack on a phone. I think we should definitely be supporting it as a true standard still. But the actual performance might be a little disappointing for music fans. Anyone trying to find some kind of audiophile experience probably won't be super impressed by what this phone offers. Like my camera review, I have a full audio examination of the View 10 on my Patreon page for subscribers, including speaker samples, and I get into all the charts and graphs. Once again, patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. Now, all this tech is utterly worthless if your battery can't last the day, and this is an area where the View 10 totally reaches up for a more premium experience. It's a big phone, but it's got a delightfully large battery, so all-day use is totally easy, even on the way that I like to punish my mobile phones. And scaling your use down a bit, trying to minimize going to a lighter load, 2-day use is easily attainable. On my video streaming test, we're right in the ballpark, right where we should be opposite flagship phones. Great performance there, but it's the recharge test that really sets this phone apart. The Honor Supercharger can charge a bigger percentage of a larger battery than any Qualcomm 835 powered phone I've ever reviewed. It's continuing a long track record of stunning performance in this area, while also preventing the phone from getting scary hot. Lastly, for all the praise that I've been heaping on this phone, it's not all roses. I do have some concerns in daily operation, and from something that might be a deal breaker for some of you folks, and that's radio performance, radio reception. The View 10 struggled a lot on my home Wi-Fi, using about a fifth of my total download speed, where other phones in my collection could handily use more bandwidth. I do use an Eero that's a mesh Wi-Fi system, and occasionally I've run into other devices too that have issues navigating the multiple nodes around my condo. But I can't say that it was just that. I also saw similar issues in LTE performance. Happily, not nearly as substantial a difference when it came to LTE, but there was about a 10 to 15% deficit against similar generation Qualcomm 835 phones when I was out and about. Sort of my non-scientific testing around the valley in Los Angeles. Whew. Well, I've been talking long enough. It's time we wrap this up. Where does that all leave us with the Honor View 10? In a land of $1,000 phones. It's really nice to see any manufacturer producing gadgets this good at half that price. That's what makes the comparison part of this discussion so difficult. There isn't a lot currently in North America that I would want to stack up, that I'd want to shoot a showdown on. Outside of the political woes facing a handful of Chinese manufacturers, many of the companies that I would turn to in this premium mid-range have been sadly quiet. I was really bummed out that we're not going to be getting another Axon this year, and OnePlus is likely going to move upscale, offering a more expensive handset to replace the 5T, which kind of means that the main competition for this phone, you're going to look at shopping a used handset, or you might even have to push out to a 2-year-old flagship. That's always an exciting debate. Do you go with a current mid-ranger, or do you try to shop an older flagship phone? Now, I think Honor has delivered some really good reasons why someone might want to pick up a View 10 over something older. Battery life is one example that springs to mind pretty quickly. It's all about appropriately balancing the compromises and concerns here against some really great benefits. This phone punches well above its price tag. It's an absolute monster in an increasingly shrinking premium mid-tier market. As always, thanks so much for watching. I'll have some links down below this video where you can find some more information on the Honor View 10, maybe shop this puppy online. Those links alongside others that help support production on this channel, including checking out my Patreon campaign. Do you really want to see what these cameras are capable of? Do you want to take that deep dive down speaker and headphone audio quality? Only place you can do that on the internet is subscribing to that Patreon, and I really want to thank all the folks who have been supporting my channel, supporting production here. I can't do this without you, and it really means a lot to me that you all have stepped up. And there are other fun perks too, like early access to my reviews, Q&A posts, and it's where I'm going to be offering a subscription to the ad-free version of my podcast. I hope you'll check it out. I'm trying to build a cool community of people who like to talk about tech. You know where you can find me around the web as @SomeGadgetGuy, and I will catch you all on the next video.